Today I logged on to Dueling Book after weeks, if not months, of not playing on it, and I was going to record some footage to talk about the deck that I'm playing, which is Lightsworns, and I think Lightsworns are really cool. But what happened, the first match that I was back, I played against a person who's playing a Bamboo Sword Exodia deck that drew an extra card going first, and then I had to call a judge to get the judge to say, what the hell are you doing? And he got a match loss, so I went on to my second game, and after that, I was still feeling pretty good. I said, you know what, I realized that because I don't play in Dueling Book, I'm a very low rating, so I chalked it up to a fluke, and then I got onto the second match where my opponent, and I went first second match, so I played quite a bit to create a field or whatever, and then my opponent didn't know how Omega worked. He was very confused by it. He thought Dark Grepher didn't have to discard for cost. He thought that he could just Foolish Burial 2 Dark Monsters. He thought that he could bounce a unactivated and resolved Foolish Burial for Blackwing Zephyros the Elite, and then synchro Plague Spitter Zombie, Dark Grepher, and the Zephyros for a level 8 synchro monster. And at that point, I realized that I don't think that I can just make a regular Lightsworn commentary here, because I think we need to talk about Dueling Book. Now, my second match, or my third match, I should say, the actual match, went all right. My opponent did have brief moments of going AFK, which was kind of annoying. But Dueling Book has been around for 6 months now, so I thought I'd do a sort of checkup, because 6 months ago, or 5 months ago at this point, I did a duel video of my first match on Dueling Book, and I kind of talked about my initial impressions on it. And after not playing on it for a while they had their ups and downs with servers and not having judges, I wanted to come back now because it's sort of in a stable condition and discuss how I feel it's doing. Let's get through the pros first. So I think the pros on Dueling Book is that they've really tried to streamline a lot of the things that were wrong with Dueling Network. I think the biggest example of this is that there's no shuffle animation when you go through your deck. That was like absolutely the most annoying thing ever. I know that was like a really small thing and the animation only took a couple seconds, but when you were like shuffling your deck like 6 times in a turn, it just made the turns unnecessarily long. I think that the zone selecting tool is very, very easy on here, which I think goes along with the fact that they have Link monsters on here. I know that you can go through some like bootleg Chinese server on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro to play with Link monsters at the time of filming this. I mean, maybe they'll update it, but at the time of filming this, you have to go through a bootleg Chinese server to play with Link monsters on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, where here, they're just all in the system. You can put them up there. And I know that when this site first came out, that was one of the old Dueling Network creators' problems with it, is that they thought that at that point Link summoning hadn't been announced, and they were mentioning their concerns, saying that when a new summoning mechanic was announced, the person that made Dueling Book would have to revamp the entire system, and it looks like they accomplished that. So I guess that wasn't that big a deal, although I'm sure on the Dueling Book end it was a pretty big deal. So I think that the whole Link summoning mechanic was implemented very well, very simple, didn't take me any time at all to figure out. So that's another plus. I still like that you have a duel log of all the things that were said and done with timestamps. That was something that was only given to admins on Dueling Network, and it never really made any sense why. It's really nice, especially for someone that gets pretty impatient. I can look and see exactly how long it's been since someone did something before I sort of say, hey, can you make a move? And I also, the last thing is that the deck constructor, and this isn't really Dueling Book's doing, but just the Dueling Network and Dueling Book deck constructor, I don't know why I can't say that word, is the most polished of all the deck constructors. The best, or the simplest example that I can give that I really fucking hate when I'm doing deck lists on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro is that on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, if you hover over a card, like let's say you go through a row of cards, each time that your cursor touches a new card, the new card appears in the top left-hand corner where you can read its effect. That sounds great, except when you need to read a card in the middle of the deck, you actually can't unless your cursor stays on it. And then if that monster or spell or trap has long text, you can't scroll down while you're on it. And if you can, it's some like wonky way that I I haven't figured out. Maybe I'm just stupid, but that's like literally the most annoying thing ever. It's just, I don't know why it's like that. And when you go over a dueling book, not like that at all. Because it knows. I don't know if this was by it just being laggy or accidental, but I feel like it was programmed that when you have your cursor over something, if you're moving the cursor doesn't then stop and pick up every single card. It's on the last card that you stopped at, which I think is really intuitive and makes it a really great experience for reading the different cards in your deck. Let's talk about the cons, though, because, I mean, obviously, I started this video off a little negative. I think the biggest con that I've noticed here is that it's really laggy and really slow. Now, I don't know if that's my computer, but I've seen concerns from other people that this site is very laggy, so it doesn't surprise me that I'm saying this as well. I don't know. I don't know quite what's wrong with it. It just doesn't seem as fluid as Dueling Network was. It's sort of weird. It just... this match here, the one that I actually played, which was actually only 2 games, it wasn't even a full 3, it took me 40 minutes to play it. I had to speed it up so that we could fit it in this video. That's insane. Considering, like, on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, you can pump out matches in like 3 to 5 minutes, and I know it's automatic, so it's not a fair comparison, but there's, under no circumstances should a not back and forth. I mean, these games aren't back and forth. I guess the second game is, but really, I mean, game 1 and game 2 really weren't that back and forth. I was pretty much just in control the entire time. They should not take 40 minutes. That's just insane. And you would think with the streamlining of like the shuffling mechanic, I don't know, you would think that that it would just go faster, but it doesn't. I'm so impatient, and I feel like a lot of people are, especially Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, but it just wasn't going fast enough for me. I don't know if that was my opponent, but I think I've experienced that in almost every game on Dueling Network that I've played, or Dueling Book that I've played. It's just not fast. I don't know if it's just not tight enough or something, because Dueling Network always took longer than Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, but it didn't feel like it took forever, where this one, it was just really slugging along, and that's probably my biggest gripe with playing on here. Like, it was a chore, basically, to play a 40-minute match. That just should not happen. The other thing is that there's not enough judges. I was on a pretty much prime time, and there were only 2 judges online, and they've responded. I don't know. This one I'm sort of conflicted on, because they responded a lot faster than the Dueling Network admins used to, but when the Dueling Network admins were on, they would have like 8 people to like 7,000 to 9,000 players, where this one had 2 people only to 500 players, and a lot of those people are just playing in like the unrated sections and stuff, so they don't even need... I would imagine there's only like 100 or 200 people online on the ranked mode at any given point. When you factor in like all the people that aren't even playing, they're just building decks, or all the people that are in the many different unrated rooms, I'd say it's only 100 or 200. So it's probably not that many judge calls, and they can get to them pretty fast. I will say I'm not super certain on their methods. The judges that I interacted with, I think it might have been the same judge each time. It's kind of hard to tell, and this is like, I don't know, this is neither here nor there, but the judges actually don't have names on here. They just say like judge number, blah, blah, blah. I think that's to remove any sort of favoritism, which is probably a good thing, but also a little impersonal. But I was not impressed with the speed of the judges that were in there. Thinking back to the Dueling Network days, the judges were always really fast to respond. When they got in the match, they would sort of say, okay, what's going on? And then they would continue talking to you. And if they're looking up into like the log, they would say, okay, I'm looking into this, so if you just give me a second to read up on what's happened. These ones... And maybe it was because they didn't have a name, but it just felt like it was like a burden on him to answer this judge call. And both of my calls were like really straightforward. It was like both cases were just, hey, my opponent's blatantly cheating. Can I have the win? And I don't know. It took a really long time, I felt, for them to come to that decision. I mean, especially that first one. And I didn't record like the entire thing, but the first one was pretty straightforward. I mean, the guy just kept playing through his deck, and then like the judge showed up, and the judge is like, okay, like you can't draw on your first turn, and the guy said, oh, I'll just discard 2 cards, that'll make up for that, even though he had like drawn through half his deck at that point. And it was just like really silly, and the judge like should have just gave him a game loss, or gave him a match loss, and then that should be it. And in the second match that I played, I even asked the judge, like, so what happens, it looks like, is that the judges can, and this is a good idea, I think, in general, but the judges can put sort of a training wheels on your account, and it's called beginner's mode, I guess. And from the sounds of it, it seems like what happens when you're in that is you can't play in ranked, you can only play in unranked. I don't know if that is for like the whole IP, because otherwise they could just make a new account. But that seems like a pretty good idea. But the problem is that the judge is sitting there explaining, like, oh, you're going to be switched to beginner's mode, and here's how you cheated. And I just want the match wins so I can fucking leave and try to play someone for real. And that was just like really bothersome to me, that like it seemed like even though I was in the right, that I was forced to like sit through and hear about this kid that like didn't know how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And that was just really frustrating. I don't know, something just rubbed me the wrong way about that, because I just felt like they were, I think impersonal is the correct word that I want to use here. It just felt like they just felt like they begrudgingly were like, oh, okay, I guess we'll give you the win because this guy cheated like the whole match. And that just seemed kind of off-putting to me a little bit. But I think the problem is that there's so few judges, and there's not as big of a community on Dueling Book as there is with Dueling Network. I mean, when Dueling Network was popular, which was pretty much the entire time it was around, I mean, everyone had a Dueling Network account. Everyone was always on Dueling Network. All the cool stuff was happening there. In Dueling Book, even though it has all these great friend features and different rooms and a lot of like avatar selections, which is all good stuff, I mean, overall, it's not the happening place. I mean, I think it's the most happening place, but I wouldn't call it like popular, if that makes sense. Because Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro and Dev Pro are kind of just dead right now with links not on them. So this is just like the only place people can go. And I don't know. If I had to grade, I don't know why I'm doing this, but if I had to grade Dueling Book, I'd give it like a solid C+ or B-. I think some things have been executed well, but I think as a user, my experience on there was pretty shitty, and I don't know if I'll be going back again. I think I'm just going to wait for Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro to get links. I don't know, I just want a faster experience. It's probably good for playing with your friends, which I'm sure, I should have said that earlier in the video, but if you're playing with your friends, a lot of these problems don't actually matter. Like when John does like viewer battles on his live streams, it's perfectly fine. But yeah, those are my thoughts after 6 months on Dueling Book, and let me know what you guys think about the website. I know I have a lot of casuals in the audience, and they all love Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, but it's really hard to play a site that doesn't have link summoning, because just everything you do is irrelevant, basically, and I want to test out some new stuff. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the gameplay. I'll see you later. Bye.